Good afternoon. Welcome to Friendship Village of Dublin. Thank you for joining us for Dale Inkley's memorial service. This is a good time, a gentle reminder to silence your cell phones. Also, I have some microphone suggestions for our speakers. Please hold the microphone this close. You can hear me. Sometimes people bring it down here or move, and you can't hear anything. Please keep the microphone here. That would be great. As you can see, we have a bagpiper with us, Jeff Lynn, and he's going to play at the very end of the service a beautiful rendition of Amazing Grace, and then another piece that he's going to play as he's walking out. Needless to say, bagpipes are loud. And so this is respectfully, humbly, a gentle suggestion that if you have a hearing aid, you may want to lower it as we get to the end of the service. Pam, Katrin, Jennifer, Douglas, Benson, Inkley family, and friends, please accept our condolences on your loss. Dale was very loved. Very well respected here in our community. And we're honored that you would have this memorial service here with us. When Pam first approached me for preparing for the service, she thought maybe we could have a small gathering in the chapel, because certainly we would only have a handful of people. And then we decided, well, as the numbers started going up, we'll move it to Kinsale Room. And then as the numbers kept going up, we realized that we had to have it here in Muirfield. And I just want to acknowledge that and just accept that as just an affirmation of you and of Dale with our community, how much we love you and we care about you and Dale. Friends, we gather to remember, celebrate, and say farewell to Edwin Dale Inkley, and to support each other in a time of need. Let us acknowledge our grief and be open in our love, affirming the joy, fragility, and mystery of life. Merciful God, we acknowledge the uncertainty of our life on earth. We are given a mere handful of days. Look down in tender love for those gathered here today whose joy is turned into mourning. According to the multitude of your mercies, uphold, strengthen, and comfort them, so they may find strength and refuge in you. Amen. Psalm 147. The Lord heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds.
afternoon. I am Jennifer, Dad's oldest daughter, and I would like to read the obituary for you. But before I start, I would like to say that Dad liked unusual ties. And first it was unusual patterns on the regular tie that most people think of. And eventually it went to bow ties and bolo ties. You may have seen some of those in some of the pictures you saw. And he had a whole collection of bolo ties, many of which are on family members today. So that's why we're wearing these. After 98 years, the obituary said E. Dale Inkley, but he was Dad to me, so I'll say Dad, departed for his final journey on August 4th. He learned some of his most valuable life lessons as a teenager when he went on several summertime expeditions in the Sierra Nevada mountains. These were sponsored by Three Corner Round, a pack outfit then associated with the Cleveland Museum of Natural History. He and a dozen or more teen boys from Cleveland camped and hiked throughout the mountains in the summers, learning to work independently and as a team to traverse the mountains. He enjoyed these experiences so much that he sent his 2 sons and his oldest grandson on the same journey in later years. When he went out, they had 60 burros carrying their supplies through the mountains. You can imagine 10 or 12 boys, teenagers, with 60 burros. Each teenager had 5 or 6 burros to manage, all strung out in a line because it was a single lane trail. So there was hundreds of feet between the front guy and the back guy. One of the stories he liked to tell from this journey was about a coming down a mountainside day, and the burros don't like to cross water. At the bottom of the hillside, mountainside, was a stream. So the guy at the bottom was trying to coax his burro across the stream, and meanwhile, the others are still coming down and kind of jamming up, so he yelled, "Hold the line." Well, the only way the guy in the back could hear that was if the second guy in line heard the first guy and turned around and said, "Hold the line." So up the hillside went this, "Hold the line, hold the line, hold the line, hold the line." Well, the guy at the top, when he finally got the command, was having his own problems managing his burros. And he, as a young teen, said, "Go to hell, go to hell, go to hell, go to hell, go to hell." When that got to the bottom, the leader said, "Who said that? Who said that? Who said that? Who said that? Who said that?" He told stories from Three Corner Round for many years. He went back for the 100th anniversary celebration, and in his pockets were lifesavers for the burros because he knew they liked that kind of treat. His TCR expeditions further defined his future when he became fast friends with fellow expeditioner Dick Combs, my uncle. Now, they had kept in touch through Dale's 2 years in the U.S. Navy, and while he earned Bachelor's of Science degrees in both electrical engineering and mechanical engineering from Iowa State University. When Dick asked Dale to be best man at his wedding, Dale had no idea he was going to fall in love with the bride's sister, Pam. Dale and Pam, Dad and Mom, were married for almost 73 years. It would have been 73 next month. They have the 4 children, whom Fred has already mentioned. He has a grandchild and 3 great-grandchildren, all of whom are here today, and many relatives and friends. In addition to providing for his family, he earned a Master of Science in Engineering Administration from Case Western Reserve University. He retired from Republic Steel after 32 years. He retired again after 13 years of teaching electricity at Cuyahoga Community College. And then he had another 26 years to enjoy gardening and working in his workshop. He was known for excellence in craftsmanship and built a back porch and a garage extension on his home, and also extensively remodeled his kitchen. He was very precise in his work. You could measure things exactly and know that they would be right. He once made us some sanding blocks. You wrap the sandpaper around the block, and then you have a nice flat surface to sand with. One of my early thoughts after receiving this was, I wonder if it's square. Followed immediately by, of course it's square, Dad made it. Neighbors on his end of their road, East Farnhurst, often sought advice on home repair, knowing they would get good advice from him. On the day of their move to Columbus, the neighbors bade a fond farewell to their mayor of the western end of East Farnhurst, an affectionate title he cherished. His precision extended to a project he decided one day he needed to learn to paint pictures. So he got a canvas and then said, what am I going to paint? So he got out a picture from his travels out west and very precisely made a grid to go over the picture and then made a grid on his canvas so he could reproduce that picture in his painting. And I believe it's over there on the table somewhere. Very precisely done. So precisely that one time he was looking at the picture and couldn't make out a detail, so he went over to his painting to see what it really was. Dad told interesting stories from his travels around the globe, his life experiences, and extensive reading of science and business publications. If you asked him about a specific tool, you might have received the entire history of the company that made it. If you showed him a piece of wood or part of an old toy, he'd know exactly where it came from. In the Vermont woods, he could find his way back home by recognizing specific trees, all the while telling you about the geology underfoot. He was an amazing man. He was Dad.
Wow. Thank you all for coming. This is a bit overwhelming. A lot of people have talked to me to express their condolences, and almost always the very first thing they say is, your dad had a great sense of humor. And he did, but not everybody got it all the time. So one of his, and you've probably heard it, one of his favorite ones, well, let me backtrack. Several years ago, 10 years ago, instead of saying, have a nice day to someone, it switched, and people started saying, have a nice rest of your day, because that way they didn't have to think about, should I say good afternoon or good morning, and just have a good rest of your day. So Dad started thinking about that, and he said, why just the day? Why not week, or month, or year? So he thought he would one-up everybody, and they would say this to him, have a good rest of your day, and he would answer back, have a good rest of your life. And if he got the delivery right and remembered to smile, people would respond well. But sometimes that didn't happen, and you could just see that they were glad that he was going off to have a good rest of his life. But then he actually did get one-upped. And Bob here told him, do you want to say it or do you want me to?
I'll say it. I wish they were a good afterlife.
You are probably wondering why this lamp is here. It represents the precision that Dad had when he was making things. So he found this piece of marble, or one or two, I'm not actually sure if these were at one time one piece, in Vermont, where he loved to go, where we all love to go. And he brought it home, and he made this lamp, and then he made the mistake of giving it to me. And he regretted that almost immediately. Because whenever he would come over, and he did this up to his last visit, the first place he would go is to the couch right next to this lamp. And he would turn it around and admire it, and sometimes he would talk about, you know, this hole had to be drilled straight. It's remarkable. And sure enough, look how thin it is, and that hole didn't come out the side. But of course, that was Dad. And then another time he might remark on this seam down here and how well this piece of marble matches that, because that wasn't easy to do. And so he would just mention that. So he, not only did he do good work, but then he would admire it also. He knew he did good work. But Dad being Dad, it wasn't just his craftsmanship, it was nature and men before him, their craftsmanship, because he would note how the glaciers had come through Vermont and they had scraped the ridges that are in this lamp. And these are actually glacial grooves that you're seeing here. But then man came along and wanted to put the marble in their buildings, and so they took their saw, and he would say, and it was probably hooked up to a water wheel, and they would put the saw blade on the top of the block at night, throw some sand on it, the water wheel would work pulling that blade back and forth, and they'd come back the next day, and there would be their block cut. So he particularly liked this piece because it had both the cultural history and the geological history behind it. And that was Dad looking at all aspects of it. Well, thank you all for coming today. It's wonderful to have your support, and I hope you all have a very good rest of your life.
Thank you. That way you can see me. That way you can see me and hear me. I'm Doug Inkley, Mom and Dad's oldest son, and I appreciate that so many people are here today and many people I haven't seen in a long time. So thank you very much for being here. I have a few remarks to make that will perhaps expand upon some of the things that you've already heard, and I also have a few props that I want to use so that I can appropriately make those remarks. And in this modern day and age, we don't use print anymore, so I have to open the correct folder, please. It seems to have closed on me. There we go. I was thinking on the way over here this afternoon, what were the three things that I probably most remembered about Dad, and you probably may touch upon that too in terms of your own memories about my father. Those three things were his amazing memory, the precision with which he did everything, and finally, his love for recycling. Let me expand upon that, perhaps starting with a combination of those. Dad did love to recycle. In fact, when we moved them out of the house a couple of years ago, we discovered that, of course, he had saved all the scraps from all the metal that he had ever used while he was living there for 50 years. Hundreds and hundreds of pounds of scrap metal, which when taken to the recyclers, which he loved to do, he got more than $1,000. And he called up Mom and said, guess how much money we got? So he was a recycler. And, excuse me for a second. He also did a lot of woodworking. And in that woodworking, he ended up with a lot of scrap pieces. And he wouldn't throw these away or just throw them out in the yard and burn them sometime in a big trash pile. Instead, he would save them in a box. And he would get these boxes from wherever he could. If you were in the grocery store and somebody was stocking the shelves, he'd be eyeing their box. Could I have that box, please? If you've ever noticed anything disappear from the trash and recycling rooms here, like an old magazine or a box, Dad had it. So he had this scrap wood, and he would put it in here in a very precise fashion. It would all be stacked exactly right so that there'd be no empty space in the box, and it would be full. But then it came time to use it, and he would go to the fireplace and prepared to make the fire, and he'd pull out several pieces of kindling, and he'd look at one like this one, and he'd say, oh, that was from the box that my father made in 1942. I can't burn that one yet. And after 3 or 4 pieces, he'd finally find something that he thought he could dispose of. Perhaps he didn't remember it, but he probably still did, but thought that it was okay to recycle it at that point in time. This is a small box of pills, no longer with pills in it, but it's recycled, of course, and it is almost completely full. Almost completely full of all the old crumpled staples that he pulled out of pieces of paper that were stapled together. So we will have to take these to the recycling center. We talked about precision, and I mentioned precision as one of the 3 things I think of about him, and it was mentioned that he redid the kitchen. And the kitchen was absolutely beautiful. You will probably see pictures of it here. It was done so precisely and every cut made so carefully that it took him only 17 years to finish the kitchen. But he was very innovative, and that during that entire time, Mother was still always able to prepare a meal. Well, when you take the plumbing out and you can't use the sink anymore, what do? Well, he took a second sink, he put it on a rolling island, and ran hoses from the pipes over to this rolling island. And wherever he was working that day, Mother could push the island over to the other side and still prepare dinner. How many years did you have to do that? Quite a few. But he did finish that project, and it was admirably done. One more small example. When we cleared out the house, there were boxes and boxes of old coffee cans and everything else that you could possibly think of, including old milk bottles. Well, these were not waste. He would very carefully cut out of these. This is very poorly done. I did it this morning. He would not approve of it. The sides are not quite straight, the measurements are not quite exact, but he would recycle it, and he would label on it what it was. This was a cold water pipe, and you would go into his basement, and every pipe was labeled, just like that. And so things were recycled and used, and he did a precise job doing it. Then finally, my last remark would be regarding tools. I would often be doing a job at home and I would need some advice. So I would call him up and I would say, Dad, I have this particular tool, I want to know how to use it, and this is the job that I'm working on, could you help me with this? Well, he could. It would usually take 25 to 30 minutes, and usually you would get your answer. So he would tell me how it worked, but also you would get when the company was first established, what year they went international, when they went out of business, and anything else that he could think of about that. And one time I thought, okay, I'm going to short circuit this. I'm going to get him straight to the point. So I managed to cut him off and get to my question again, and he started to talk. He says, no, wait a minute, I have to go off on a tangent. And off he'd go, and he'd tell you what he was going to tell you anyway, even though you tried to stop him. So it's with those fond memories that I think of my father. I will say that my own work is probably not as precise as his was, but I do enjoy recycling. I do enjoy recounting in my mind all the many stories that he had to tell, even if a lot of it was information I actually hadn't asked for. So thank you very much for being here.
Well, Pam, these are the most props I've ever seen in a memorial service, so that makes it really unique. We're going to take this opportunity to open it up and invite people. If there's anyone that would like to share a thought or a memory of Dale, you can come forward, or I can come to you and give you the microphone.
My name's Chuck Liebenauer. I lived across from Pam and Dale for 35 years, somewhere around there. I cried when you moved, but it was always a joy to see him out and walking the neighborhood and finding out what he'd discovered that nobody else knew. Or he would point out something that everybody should know, but they would ignore. I don't think there was a mean bone in his body. And he made the years living across from me a pleasant experience and always a good day. So thank you, Pam, for letting us share it with you. God bless.
Let me just pass that way. Thank you.
My name is Beverly Francis, and I'm a resident here at Friendship Village. My husband David and I so enjoyed our meals in the Legacy with Pam and Dale, and it is one of my hopes, and I'm sure the residents here in the room share this with me, that we all can be part of your extended family and share your loss and enjoy the memories. Thank you.
Can you pass that down? Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, my name's Piero Capicchione. We were also Dale and Pam's neighbors for, well, almost 25 years almost, and just a couple houses down from Dale. And there was a lot of great Dale stories, which I don't want to, we'd be here all day, okay? But let me just cut to a couple of them. You talked about his recycling and how he'd like to, you know, let's use the word garbage pick, because that's kind of what it was, okay? And he had a couple of incidents with us that were really entertaining. One of them had to do with even our garbage. We had put out, we replaced an old screen door, you know, and we put it out on the tree lawn to take away, and then next thing we know, it's kind of gone, and then we found out Dale had taken it. And I remember saying to Dale, "What did you take the screen door for?" I mean, I didn't care, but why did you take it? "Oh, it made a good straight line." I'm like, okay, you needed that. Okay, good, makes a straight line with it. And another time, he got me in one of his adventures. There was down the street, remember those old rain barrels they would have, like on the, catching water from the roof, you know, and they'd go in there. Anyway, Dale had seen a neighbor down the street who was getting rid of their rain barrel. And so he comes down to me and he goes, "Hey, Piero." "Yeah, Dale." Goes, "Want to come with me? I want to pick up something." I'm like, okay, you know, so fine. So we walk down the street. I'm not sure what he's up to. He goes, "Yeah, I'm going to show you something I found." All right, good. So we go down to this neighbor's house, and it's, you know, a big rain barrel, and it's got a hole in it, the way these things are made. And he puts it down, and he starts kicking it up the street, like rolling it up the street, you know. So I remember Chuck made a comment, goes, "See these two people walking the street? I don't know who was crazier, the guy in front or the guy following him." No, probably the guy following. Anyway, so we followed him up the street, and I'm still the whole time thinking, okay, well, where's this going? So we go to his house, and then he sets us up, I don't know, his back room or something, and he sets up like some candles. There's these little candles, you know, he lights them. I'm like, okay. He goes, "I'm going to show you how to do a candle blower out." I think, what? Okay. So he sets it up. He hits the back of the barrel, and water, you know, the air flies out through the hole and blows out the candle. I'm like, okay, Dale, that's pretty cool. What is? Yeah. Did you see that? That's kind of cool. Like, yeah, okay. That was the entire point of his demonstration there. And I have to throw one more in there. This is actually my favorite story, because I'm thinking of actually writing a book about some of Dale's adventures on the street. It would be awesome. Anyway, this had to do with the drone. You remember the drone that hit your house, Pam? Okay, all right. Well, how could you forget it? Okay. So I'm walking up the street one day, and Dale comes up and goes, Hey, Piero, you want to see there's a helicopter in my backyard." "Helicopter, really?" He goes, "Yeah, come on back here." Okay, so we go back there. And there's this drone that had hit the house, hadn't been damaged, so it's just laying on the ground, and it's kind of half dead, but it's still, a couple of the wheels are still spinning. He goes, well, Dale, that's not a helicopter, that's a drone. He goes, I know that. I'm like, okay, well, you called it a helicopter. Saying what? He goes, this thing hit my house. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't know what to say about that. But it goes, so then all of a sudden the guy who owned the drone shows up in our in the backyard. He goes, well, that's my drone. And Dale says, can I have it? And Dale says, no. Because Dale was not happy with this. And he goes, no, it hit my house. And I'm like, okay. So this guy's going, well, what happened? He goes, well, it was flying over apparently a street or two over, and he said some birds hit it, and it's accidentally flew off course and hit the house. So Dale was not happy with this. And all I remember is in the end, when the police told Dale that he had to return the drone, he was like, he didn't really understand that, wasn't really exactly happy with it, but it was a pretty entertaining little story. So Dale and the drone is part of East Farnhurst lore. It's part of our history, and we love him for that. But all that aside, he's one of the nicest people I've ever met. Whenever we needed help, like at one time my son was and my neighbor trying to get a basketball pole off the side, and it was stuck in cement. Dale would come over, and he's pushing. Now he's 90 years old, and my son said, he was really strong. He was pushing that thing. Without his help, we never would have got that out of there. I'm like, that's the kind of amazing person, because he always was looking out to help people. Whenever we had projects, which I normally would screw up because I'm not an engineer, I'm terrible, he would come over and say, you have the right tool for that? Well, probably not. You know how to do that? Not really. And then he would come over and bring the tool over and explain it to me. So just a wonderful, wonderful man, and we really miss him, and we'll always have wonderful memories of him.
Thank you. Let's pass it back. Can you pass it forward? Okay.
Okay.
So, Marlene, Piero, my husband Chuck, and I'm Lee. Just want to say that there's all the stories that we told. We came in from East Farnhurst to be here, to see the mayor of West East Farnhurst. But just all due respect to all the wonderful things that Pam did, because she's still one of my favorites. I got to say that Dale was the man, I'm certain, who led the person who bought your house on East Farnhurst to put a plaque outside your door saying Inkley House. So very loved.
I'd like to add to the barrel story. I had not heard that, but it began years earlier with coffee cans, and he would drill a hole about 1 inch in diameter in the end of the coffee can, the metal end, and then put the lid back on. Of course, the coffee can is empty, and take a spoon and let us kids hit the plastic part with a spoon and try to aim it just right to put the flame of the candle out. So the barrel is a huge exaggeration of that.
Thank you.
Do you remember Mr. Smith used to walk down the street and he wore his hat on a slant, a real slant, and Dale was just itching to use a barrel and with a hole and to knock off Mr. Smith's hat.
Before I say the final prayer of thanksgiving, Pam and her children are going to be right here. So after the service, please do greet them, and please do remain for our refreshments that we will have. Loving God, we thank you that for Dale, death is past and pain is ended. Look down upon our sorrowing hearts today. We humbly pray, and be gracious to us. Fill our hearts with trust in you that by night and by day, at all times and in all seasons, we may without fear commit those who are dear to us to your never failing love. Amen. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today.